Michael Berman, lifelong resident of Crown Heights. I am on the board for about 10 years. I think I've been on the ULURP probably for around on and off for 5 years.
I'm John Graber, resident of PLG in Crown Heights. And I've been on the community board as a ULURP member, resident member for about 5 years.
Hi, I'm Teresa Westerville. I am a member of this committee this is my first time. But I've been on the community board on the EP for 3 years prior to this, and I'm interested in land use and environment. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicola Cox. I am a member of the resident member of the Land Use Committee, and live around the corner. So I've been a member of this committee for most of my life.
Hi, I'm Suki Chiang. I'm the chair of the Land Use Committee. I'm a resident of PLG. I've been a member of the Land Use Committee for several years now, and look forward to hearing from all of you.
Hi, my name is Esteban Perron. I am also a resident member of the Land Use Committee. I live right up here on Franklin Avenue, and I've been on this committee for 8 years.
Good evening. I'm Josh Serrano. I'm a community board member. Been on the Land Use Committee for a few months now. I live on Fenimore Street, so not too far from there.
Hector Robertson, long-term resident of Crown Heights.
Max Davidson, I'm a community board member, been on the ULURP committee for a few months, and I live on Parkside.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So I'm just going to start with a quick review of some of the things that have been going on in the city. I'm going to take a very, very brief update on the Spice Factory, 962 972 Franklin Avenue. Does anyone want to, any of the committee members want to do that? So we're not entirely sure what the latest is yet, but it sounds like this rezoning may be going through the city council at this point. We don't know exactly yet how tall the building is going to be, but it is going to be bigger than the as of right. The press reports are saying it could be 14 stories, but with a very sharp angle to reduce the shadows. It will be a large number of units. They're saying 355 units, which is a lot more than the 168 as of right. And there's some question also about what the AMIs are going to be. So this is something that we're going to need to follow up on. With respect to City of Yes and some of the citywide housing policies that are going on. So City of Yes was the mayor's policy that went through the Department of City Planning, and it was basically about changing the zoning throughout the city to produce more housing. He was going to basically upzone every single lot in the city to be able to produce more housing, and the city council is taking somewhat of a different view. I think there have always been concerns about fair housing. There are a handful of neighborhoods that don't produce any housing, that, this district is not one of them. We've built over 4,000 units of housing since 2010. There's probably another over 2,000 units that are fully permitted and in the pipeline. But, there are neighborhoods that do almost nothing, like a few hundred to less than 1,000 in the last 10 years. And so what they passed in January of 2021, which was the Fair Housing Framework, was to say that they were going to look to set housing targets pretty much for every district. So that is expected to start in January of 2025. And the latest thing that's come out since then, Dante, can we get the press release up from the speaker? So recently, the speaker released a press release on her housing policy. The original Fair Housing Framework passed in January 2021 was fairly vague. It just alluded to the idea of housing targets for every neighborhood, and with the need for infrastructure. It's expected to be implemented by HPD starting in 2025. And the city, for all it's worth, is a little bit more specific about what they'd like to see, and I don't know if, I know some of you will be familiar with it. Esteban, you want to?
Sure. So this plan, I have a basic outline here. It's all stuff that sounds great. Unfortunately, there are no numbers attached to it, so you get a lot of significantly increased funding or increased funding, which I don't know what the difference is between those two, or incentivize. All these things, they talk about not just those housing targets, but some tenant protections, which are also very vague. So it's kind of hard. I have a 3-page document and I have no idea what it says because it doesn't actually do anything. Anything that actually gives you numbers and like an actual enforcement mechanism for any of it. So it's yet to be seen if that's going to do anything, but that is the council's sort of counter to CBS. And supposedly that's, if that was adopted, then they would vote in favor of CBS. That's what they're proposing to vote on.
Well, it would just be an opinion on mine. When I look at what the city council has proposed, they're trying to answer the concerns that many residents made and brought up during the hearings, which is about infrastructure that's needed, affordability rates, displacement, et cetera. I'll just say that. And this seems to be a wish list. Like, oh yeah, we heard you, and yes, we want to do this, and yes, we want to do that, but as Esteban said, there's no meat to it. There are no details. There's nothing that we can hang our hat on and say, this is what is being proposed. If it's infrastructure, which is what most of Queens and Staten Island said, we flood. Every time it rains, I can't invite people over because my basement's gonna flood, my toilet's gonna flood. We can't build anymore. We have to deal with what we have now. To me, a lot of the items there are prerequisites to City of Yes. We need to get our house in order before we have any other additional major development going on. And so to me, what they propose, I think is fine. Let's get that passed. Let's get that started. And then let's revisit City of Yes once our house is in order. That's the way I look at it. So I don't see how a wish list is going to be satisfactory to the concerns of the people that raise concerns. Because as we know, without a budget, without state funding, I'm assuming some of the actions that they asked for in terms of affordability would need to be passed by state and other legislators. I don't see how what they have proposed would suffice and meet the needs of City of Yes. It's just a way to placate us.
Yeah, I think, obviously it remains to be seen what they actually come through with, but I think my takeaway from this is that the council is taking a different approach. It's a non-zoning based approach to creating more housing and more affordable housing where it's needed. They are supporting the idea of subsidies for affordable housing, and I think in particular I heard during the hearing that there was support for affordable homeownership. So that's a message that I hope that our developers hear. In addition to the need to put in the necessary infrastructure, because even in a community like this, there is significant, even though we're not coastal, there is significant flooding because it's a lower lying area. Additionally, they're addressing some of these fair housing issues. So with respect to the lower density districts, they're supporting affordable housing mandates on the larger transit-oriented development sites. Nobody wants their house knocked down, but there are some extremely large sites out there in low density zoning that are near transit that would be appropriate for want to give before we move on? And I just briefly wanted to say, our elected officials, our council member, Rita Joseph, our borough president, they are supporting the idea of a comprehensive housing plan, rather than only looking at rezonings on a spot basis. And I mean, to me, when I look at that, together with something like a fair housing framework where they're thinking about housing targets, I think it's very important for this committee, for the housing committee, to start thinking about this in a broader way. So for example, like how much have we built? We know, and this is something that we've said before, but for those who are new, maybe you haven't heard it, since 2010, we've built over 4,000 units of housing in this community district. We have right now permitted over 2,000 units. Those are units that are very likely to be built in the near future. City of Yes, for example, is targeting 50 to 100,000 units citywide. So there's 51 council districts. If you think fair is an equal number, are we already there? Right? I mean, but at the same time, we know there's a lot of as-of-right development that's going to continue to happen. How do we want to address that? What are the concerns of the residents' districts about the as-of-right development that's happening? And, again, how do we want to try to shape that? I think from there to sort of understand, the zoning resolution does guide us to say we need to produce sufficient housing for the current and future population. So how do we understand what the future population is going to be, right? We have demographic projections. We know that there's been some significant population changes. In the last 4 years in New York City, we've lost about 550,000 residents, according to the census. It might be time to sort of recalibrate and understand what the need is based on future population growth and vacancy. That said, there is going to be, it's reasonable to expect there's going to be growth for a while, even if it's very slow. So how many units do we need to see? And where are we okay with having development? Where are we not okay with it? That's kind of the idea as I see it. And how do we come up with affordable housing? How do we come up with senior housing? Who are landowners, who are developers, who are willing to do that? Does anybody else have any comments? Is anything they want to
And what happens to this plan? What happens to the plan?
So the idea, I think, is to discuss, right, what the needs of the district are. And, we have our zoning guidelines. I think everybody's had a chance to take a look at them. The housing committee has a housing resolution that guides us. And we want to try and get more specific about what the district's needs are. That's what community boards are here for. They're here to, plan for communities. What happens after that, it's up to all of you.
Are you aware of any other district that has created one of these plans and has been respected in the long term?
So this is a new thing, the Fair Housing Framework. We don't know what's going to come down from HPD, but I would expect to see something from them. So I think it's probably a good idea to get ahead of that. If you don't have something to say about what your needs are, I think they're going to tell you what the target is, and you may not like it.
Yeah, I agree, but I know other community boards have created these types of changes, and they've not been respected, and they've been washed over. So I'm concerned that we create this and then it's not worthless, just as the other board that is part of Crystal Hudson's district, they created one, and it was not followed. So I think it might be a waste of time. Sorry, but that's what happened to other, any other board that has created one of these plans has not, it's not been followed.
Yeah, anybody else? Esteban?
Yeah, just to that point, the Atlantic Avenue rezoning as it stands now, basically ignored the 10 years worth of work that they had done at the community board on the ground, which was like a very robust, rezoning that would include, work requirements and manufacturing, and it was it was a really great plan. But yeah, none of these plans have ever been implemented. Like the last one that they tried to do was, now Borough President Reynoso's district did a plan, and then they got into a fight with city planning about it, and ultimately withdrew the plan because city planning amended it, changed it so much, and it didn't look anything like what they did. So yeah, it's not a good, yeah, there's not good precedent.
Anybody else?
Yes, very, I just want to echo the comments about the vagueness. While there are a lot of good ideas in the council's framework, nothing is specific enough. But it does seem like we were listening to some of the most frequent complaints that came up from the community, especially in terms of infrastructure and affordability. So need to see more before feeling one way or another. Unfortunately, though, I think we are at time.
All right, well, thank you for keeping us on track. And let me just note, one thing I liked, it said support for neighborhood plans. So next, I think we have a presentation from 341 Troy Avenue. This is a Board of Standard and Appeals variance. It goes back a way, I think, all the way to 2008. And so Jay is going to give us an overview.
Good evening, my name is Jake Goldstein. I'm here on behalf of the owners of 341 Troy Avenue, which is the northeast corner of Troy Avenue and Carroll Street. Some of you may remember me. I've been here a few times in the past on this application. It has been around, it was approved initially in 2010, and it's gone through iterations and certain issues with the development that have since been overcome. And we were here in 2022 for an extension of time to allow us to do this project. Unfortunately, with BSA, anytime they'll approve something, and if you want to change a wall on the inside of the building, or if you want to change something in the building with a minor amendment, you have to go back to BSA, and you have to ask their permission, and that's where we are today. The project before you, which again is the northeast corner of Troy Avenue and Carroll, is a residential area. There's residential buildings all around with single-family homes and multi-story buildings. And you were approved for a 5-story building with 26 apartment units and 32 parking spaces inside. The amendment seeks to reconfigure the cellar so that we keep the same number of parking spaces. It just provides a better circulation for the parking with no change to the number of parking spaces that was approved and that's proposed. Throughout the building, we've asked for a number of changes to the interior to change the configuration of some of the interior walls. The original proposal had a very wide range of apartment sizes, ranging from about 1,200 square feet to 3,300 square feet. When going for permits now and finalizing the building and getting ready to break ground, we realized that those 3,300 square foot apartments were excessively large for this project, and we're asking the Board of Standards and Appeals to allow us to reconfigure the interior walls so that we can spread the floor area that was approved between all the units. Right now, the units will be roughly 1,500 to 1,800 units for the majority of the units. The largest unit will be 2,300, smallest unit 1,200, but the majority of the units will range from 1,500 to 1,800 square feet. So again, there's no change to the actual envelope of the building, no change to the size of the building that was approved, and no change to the number of units or number of parking spaces. All we're doing is trying to reconfigure some of the interior walls. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Could you just, first of all, give us a little bit more background about these? What types of apartments are these? Are they rentals? Are they condos? What's the size of the site? zoning change are you asking for?
No problem.
And
So,
what was the original reason for the variance?
an important distinction is that this is a variance as opposed to a rezoning. So we're asking for site-specific and building-specific. And the relief requested is, and the relief that was granted by BSA was there to overcome certain environmental conditions or soil conditions that were on the site that are still to be remediated and go through OER to remediate those. We're not changing the underlying zone, which is an R4 zoning district, but we were granted additional floor area, additional lot coverage to overcome. So we have, our site is 16,000 square feet roughly, and we're proposing a 48,000 square foot building. So we went from a 1.35 to a 3.0 FAR. And they allowed for a height increase, and they allow us to have smaller side yards, because when we configured a lot of this size, it was determined based on the analysis that it couldn't make money on an as-right basis given the hardships, and that's why BSA granted us the relief that we sought at the time, and that we seek today.
What's the height of this?
I'm sorry?
What is the height of this?
The height of the building is going from a street wall, which was 25 is permitted, to 44 feet, and the total height is 35 feet, is going to 54 feet.
And so in 14 years, you guys didn't conduct any environmental impact whatsoever?
We did full environmental impact. We didn't start the remediation process. We're ready to do so now. There's been full environmental review on this property, and there are conditions in place that require us to go through OER in order to remediate the site. I'm sorry?
What was the second thing?
It's been a vacant lot for,
Why
is there any
need for remediation?
because prior to that, there was a gas station on this site that had oil spills and underground water tanks. Underground oil tanks.
Are you involved in the brownfield cleanup program? They have several other sites in this district that are, for example, the Empire Boulevard site.
We're not. This is a private application that hasn't enrolled in that program, and it's being privately funded.
Okay, is that optional for you to enroll in the program? 'Cause I understand it's like a higher standard cleanup than.
It's not something that we're prepared to do. This was done through OER, and we're required to go through their office and make sure that this is done prior to construction, that everything we put in place with regard to cleanup and health and safety is in place with them.
So OER is what? Just.
Office of Environmental Remediation.
And that's a city.
That's a city office that controls, used to be DEP, but it controls the cleanup of these types of sites when it goes through the BSA process.
We actually don't have the documents related to the environmental cleanup. Could we get them?
I can get into there from the original application. Nothing
Okay.
with regard to that was submitted. But if you send me an email, I'm happy to send you a link to everything.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah.
That predates me a little bit, so I'm gonna bear with me while I find it. But if not, we can get it
Is
from the
there
site.
a reason for such a delay? Because 2008, the whole market has changed.
Right.
Now, most sites are being required to provide some level of affordable units, a certain number, especially for this type of an increase. It didn't go through rezoning, but it's still a significant increase to the farm.
But I don't think the answer to the question is whether or not these are condos or rentals.
Right.
I didn't get there. They're going, sorry. I'm trying to feel the question.
You're only required to refer to a zoning change, not a variance.
Right. If you go for a rezoning, there's a mandatory inclusionary. BSA works on the basis of they do a financial feasibility study where they juxtapose the hardships and the construction costs to give you the minimum you need. So they don't give you a windfall in terms of the units you get, it's the minimum. And that's, as Suki was at the hearing, they push back on those analyses so that they ensure that even now, when I go back for my modification, it is the minimum that I need in order to be made whole. These are gonna be 26 condo units when they're constructed.
And the reason for the delay?
There's numerous financial issues, and the crash of 2010 hit us particularly hard, 2008 rather, but particularly hard. So now we have our financing in place, we're ready to go.
I have a question, because I didn't understand what you were saying in terms of requirements when they're getting ready to now build. This wasn't a vacant spot for how many years?
It's been vacant for at least 14 that I've seen this project around.
So is the Department of Health and the Department of Sanitation involved in making requirements
It's the
And
par-
the reason I'm asking, it's been our experience in our block, that anything that's been vacant for over even 10 years is now a rat hotel, and we're tired of being held accountable for the city's negligence and dealing with abandoned buildings. Do you happen to know if the city Department of Health is involved in holding them accountable for dealing with the rats before the rest of the people in the block have to get summonses and violations for them?
Was that to me or something? Because as far as I know, Department of Environmental Protection and Office of Environmental Remediation are the agencies involved. I know that we keep a clean site, and that over the years we've, worked with the community board to provide cleanup for the site when necessary, but also to provide relief for at certain times the community board needed things, and we allowed them to use the site. So we've been good neighbors and we've been maintaining the site, and now we're ready to proceed.
I'm not challenging that, I'm sure you're maintaining the site, but everybody knows that as you dig deeper, there's no way in the.
Right now, there's no hole in the site, so digging is not a problem, but as we go forward, DOB requires us to have a road protection plan as part of our construction. So that'll be in place, and OER and DEP will ensure that any potential hazardous conditions are remediated as well.
But you don't know if the Department of Health has been consulted.
It's not Department of Health, it would go through DOB, would have a road protection plan in place for us, or require one from us.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Bertrand Marcus. I'm the Community Director and Advocate for Brooklyn. I know some of you in here know me. I advocate for all of Brooklyn. Now, the site that you speaking of, Carolyn and was it Troy? That site, from my knowledge, I know it's been a vacant lot for over 20 years. For over 20 years. This goes back way into the 90s, because I've been around doing this type of work, advocacy work for the city of Brooklyn for probably about, 40 years or more. And as I go around and looking at all these different sites and projects, looking to put things that will benefit our community, and I find that our people was literally denied access to those. Some people wanted to put gardens there, it was denied. Some people wanted to put centers for the youths, it was denied. And now that the developers come in now, and it's okay for them to come and build. Now, I find that the developers are not even thinking about the community itself, because many of these buildings that are going up, it's unaffordable, period. And two, the low-income people does not have the access to the projects, period. We in the community are the ones who are last to know what's going on in the community. Many times I go to the block association meetings and so forth, and I'm trying to educate them on what's happening as I hear what's happening. I have a team of people that works with me that goes to the community boards and so forth and bring back the information so we could address these issues. Now, this site that you're speaking of, it's not clear on how it's going to be disseminated or structured for the community, right? And most of the projects that's going up right now yes, but most of the projects that are going up right now, the buildings that are going up right now, especially in this area, it seems as though it's not conducive for our people to even access. And I've been looking at that on a wide basis. I brought it to the city council.
We have to wrap up.
I brought it to the city council, and I said, we need changes. They asked us what we need, and I told them what we need, but the planning committee are not even communicating with the community boards, and I wanted to know why.
If you could give us a little team answer, maybe you can speak to what these apartments are, what are the proposed prices they're offering them at. I
finished
You
yet,
have an
but
estimate, could you put that up?
I don't have it. I have to look, I didn't prepare a financial analysis for someone who testified did.
Definitely.
But again, the financial analysis and the proposal that you see before you is based on the minimum variance. So in order to make the return, we said that based on comparables, that's what the market rate would be, not based on what we can charge, but based on what's actually sold in the area. And that's how they determined what the minimum variance was for us. And that's where we were. In terms of community centers, we actually had iterations before this board where we wanted to put community centers at the ground floor and actually above. And the board stands to give determined that it was too large of a building and too much of an ask in order to have both of them. They instructed us back
You're
in
mumbling, could you speak up a little?
They instructed us back in 2010 to remove the community aspect of it and keep it strictly residential building.
Well, that's interesting for us to know, actually. My understanding was it was gonna be, you were looking at targeting something like $700 or $800 a square foot. So for a 1,500 square foot condo, maybe like $1 million plus, you're thinking, like pretty much all of them average in that area, about $1 million plus.
For that area?
So Keith, we need to have clarification on what the change is to the application.
Right, the only change to the applications today would be to allow us to make the large 3,000 square foot units more reasonable size of between 1,500 and 1,800. So we're making those large units smaller because it was determined that while we thought maybe there would be a market for it, there's a market for, those 2,000 square foot, 1,500 square foot apartments instead, and that's what we're targeting.
The outside is staying the same?
The outside is not changing at all.
So we're not families.
2,000 square foot apartment, 1,500 square foot apartment is family size.
Do we have another question?
What do you consider family size?
Better mix.
Sir, in the black, do you have a question?
A lot of the new buildings that are going up are causing prices of food and causing prices of daycare and causing all kinds of quality of life costs for people who are already living in those neighborhoods to reach stages around affordability. Is there any kind of social responsibility involved in you placing 100 families or 100 people on a block who are going to need daycare services, who are going to need food, and they can afford to spend more money on food and more money on daycare, and people in the community cannot.
Yep.
So where is the negotiation between you making a lot of money and the effect of the experience on the people who are already living in the community?
We're trying to make use of a vacant site that's been vacant for more than, mentioned 20 years probably. We have a developer who owns the site, he's trying to make it, he's basing his proposal on the minimum variance as determined by the city and based on the minimum variance as determined by the analyses that we've had to do many times over the years. This building is not gonna make them rich, this building will allow them to make a beneficial use of the site, and it will provide 26 apartments for people in the neighborhood, or for people to stay in this neighborhood.
That's not so.
That wasn't my question.
No.
Okay, this is a green hat.
Hi, I just wanted you to clarify what the minimum variance is and what the proposed, because I think you did mention it, what the proposed amount would be for the market rate for the condos. You're going from 9 townhouses and then to 26, correct?
No, we have approval for 26 units, and we're keeping it at 26 units.
Okay.
I think what she's suggesting is she's asking, what would you be able to build under the as-of-right zoning if you didn't have a variance?
So we put in there a lower or a lesser variance scenario.
Your as-of-right under the R4 zoning.
As of right, we would be able to build a building with 24 units.
No, that's not the as-of-right. The as-of-right under the R4 zoning, what would be, how many square feet would you get?
Square feet, we'd be able to build 21,754 square feet,
Okay,
and we would be able to have 24 dwelling units in that building.
okay, but it's much smaller.
Correct.
Okay.
So which means
and you're
we-
going from there to the
Apartments.
48,000.
48,000. Does that answer your question?
I just want to know exactly what does the minimum variance mean? Is that the amount of units?
The minimum
What
variance-
is that?
The
Like, what's
minimum
the
variance is
definition
the
of
project as a whole.
that?
So as determined by the city, the minimum variance is 26 units as currently proposed, not as currently approved. That's the minimum variance. We are able to start based on that construction tomorrow. We're trying to make units, instead of being 3,000 square feet, blend that number so that they're smaller units, 1,500 to 1,800 square feet. But again, that represents, and we have to prove to the Board of Appeals that that continues to represent the minimum variance for this site.
Okay, let me just cut in here and say that the minimum variance, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jay,
Yeah.
is the minimum increase in zoning that would allow you to make a profit. Because what you're saying is that due to the environmental cleanup, you're not able to make a profit on the smaller site, and so the Board of Standards and Appeals is supposed to give you the minimum increase that would allow you to make a profit. Is that correct?
Correct.
So instead you make this, they're making apartments much smaller, so they can have more apartments, so they can make more money. So,
We're not changing the number of apartments.
So what happened to the extra space, may I ask?
We took a
The extra
3,000 square foot
Yeah.
apartment and an 1,100 square foot apartment, and we averaged the floor area. We shifting walls in the building.
that's what I'm saying.
So you're making the
apartments-
inside of the, I'm trying to understand.
We're
what
changing
you-
the interior of the building so that you have the same